The glass doors of Meridian Tech Solutions reflected the morning sun like a mirror, making everything look golden and perfect. But Sarah Mitchell didn't feel golden or perfect as she stood outside those doors, holding her 4-year-old daughter, Emma's hand. Her stomach twisted into knots, tighter than the bun she had pulled her brown hair into that morning. She had practiced for this interview for 3 weeks, studying every possible question they might ask, researching the company until she knew their mission statement by heart. But all that preparation couldn't fix the one problem she faced right now. Emma's babysitter had called sick just 30 minutes before they needed to leave, and Sarah's neighbor, who sometimes helped, was out of town visiting her sister. There was nobody else. No family nearby, no friends who weren't at their own jobs. It was just Sarah and Emma against the world, like it had been for the past 2 years since David died in that construction accident. Sarah looked down at her daughter, who wore her best dress, a pink one with tiny flowers that Sarah had found at a thrift store and washed 3 times to make it look new. Emma's blonde curls bounced as she looked up at her mother with those big blue eyes that reminded Sarah so much of David. "Mummy, is this where you're going to work?" Emma asked in her sweet voice that could melt anyone's heart. Sarah knelt down to Emma's level and straightened her daughter's collar. "This is where Mommy has an interview, sweetheart. Remember what we practiced. You're going to be very quiet and color in your book while Mommy talks to the nice people." Emma nodded seriously, clutching her coloring book and the small box of crayons that Sarah always kept in her purse for emergencies, taking a deep breath that did nothing to calm her racing heart. Sarah pushed open those heavy glass doors and stepped into a lobby that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Everything was marble and chrome, with abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than Sarah had made in the last year, working 3 part-time jobs. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a designer suit, looked up from her computer. Her professional smile faltered when she saw Emma. Sarah walked to the desk, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Good morning. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I have a 9 o'clock interview for the administrative coordinator position." The receptionist's eyes darted between Sarah and Emma, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising slightly. "I see, and you've brought—" She let the sentence hang in the air like a question mark made of ice. "This is my daughter, Emma. I apologize, but my child care fell through at the last moment. She'll be very quiet, I promise." Sarah kept her voice steady, professional, even, as she felt judgment radiating from the woman behind the desk. The receptionist picked up her phone and spoke in a low voice, her eyes never leaving Sarah and Emma. After a moment, she hung up and stood. "Mrs. Harrison will be right out." Sarah guided Emma to the waiting area, a collection of leather chairs. That looked too expensive to actually sit on. Emma climbed onto one carefully, her little legs dangling far from the floor. She opened her coloring book to a picture of a butterfly and began selecting her crayons with the concentration of an artist choosing paints. Sarah sat beside her, straightening her own modest gray suit for the 100th time. It was her only suit, bought second-hand, but altered to fit perfectly. She had even managed to repair a small tear in the sleeve so well that you could barely see it if you didn't know where to look. The clicking of heels on marble announced someone's arrival before Sarah saw her. Mrs. Harrison emerged from a hallway like a storm cloud in a black power suit. She was in her 50s, with steel gray hair, pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face. Her eyes were cold as they surveyed Sarah and Emma, her lips pressing into a thin line of disapproval. "Ms. Mitchell." Her voice could have frozen water. "You brought a child to a job interview." Sarah stood, her hand automatically reaching for Emma's shoulder. "Mrs. Harrison, I sincerely apologize. My child care arrangement fell through this morning, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Emma is very well behaved, and she understands the importance of being quiet." Mrs. Harrison's nostrils flared slightly, as if she had smelled something unpleasant. "This is a professional environment, Ms. Mitchell, not a daycare center. The fact that you would even consider bringing a child here shows a serious lack of judgment. The words hit Sarah like physical blows, but she kept her chin up. She had learned long ago that showing weakness only invited more attacks. With respect, Mrs. Harrison, my being here shows my commitment to this position. I could have called to cancel, but I chose to come because I believe I'm the right person for this job. The right person. Mrs. Harrison's laugh was sharp and bitter. The right person would have proper childcare arrangements. The right person would understand that this is a Fortune 500 company, not a playground. Her voice grew louder with each word, drawing stares from others passing through the lobby. Emma shrank against her mother's leg, her coloring book forgotten. Sarah felt her daughter's small body trembling, and something fierce rose up in her chest. She might accept this treatment for herself, but not in front of Emma. I understand your concerns, Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. But I have all the qualifications listed in your job posting. 5 years of administrative experience, proficiency in all the required software, excellent references. If you would just look at my resume. Mrs. Harrison cut her off with a wave of her manicured hand. I don't need to see your resume. What I see right now tells me everything I need to know. You're clearly not Meridian material. She turned to the receptionist. Please have security escort Ms. Mitchell and her child from the building. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Security, as if she were some kind of criminal. She heard Emma whimper softly and looked down too. See tears gathering in her daughter's eyes. That's when it happened. The elevator at the far end of the lobby chimed softly, its doors sliding open with a whisper. A man stepped out, and the entire atmosphere of the room shifted. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that had just a touch of silver at the temples. His charcoal suit was clearly custom-made, fitting him perfectly. But it wasn't his appearance that commanded attention. It was the way he carried himself, with a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. Everyone in the lobby seemed to stand a little straighter, including Mrs. Harrison, whose face had gone pale. This was Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions, a man whose picture graced the covers of business magazines, who had built this company from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. And he was walking straight toward them. His brown eyes took in the scene with one sweep. Mrs. Harrison's aggressive stance, Sarah's protective position over Emma, the little girl's tears, the security guard who had just arrived and looked uncertain about what to do. Is there a problem here? Marcus asked, his voice deep and measured. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that made everyone stop and listen. Mrs. Harrison immediately shifted into a different mode, her harsh expression melting into something that was trying to be pleasant, but looked more like she had eaten something sour. Mr. Sterling, I didn't expect to see you here this morning. I was just handling a situation. This woman brought her child to a job interview, which is completely inappropriate, and I was having her removed. Marcus's gaze moved to Sarah, and she found herself looking into eyes that were intelligent and surprisingly warm. Then he looked down at Emma, who was peeking out from behind her mother's leg. To everyone's surprise, Marcus crouched down to Emma's level, his expensive suit beat damned. Hello there, he said gently. What's your name? Emma looked up at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Emma, she whispered. That's a beautiful name. And what do you have there? He gestured to her coloring book. Emma held it up shyly. Butterflies. I was coloring them for Mommy. Marcus smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face from intimidating CEO to someone almost approachable. You're doing a wonderful job. Very neat coloring, staying inside the lines. That takes patience and skill. He stood up and turned his attention to Sarah. You must be Emma's mother. I'm Marcus Sterling. Sarah shook his offered hand, surprised by how firm yet gentle his grip was. Sarah Mitchell. I'm here for the administrative coordinator interview, or at least I was. Marcus raised an eyebrow and looked at Mrs. Harrison. The interview hasn't happened yet, has it? Mrs. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. Well, no, but given the circumstances, Marcus held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. The circumstances being that Ms. Mitchell's childcare fell through and she still made the effort to be here on time. His tone was mild, but there was steel underneath it. That sounds like dedication to me. He turned back to Sarah. Tell me, Ms. Mitchell, why do you want to work for Meridian? Sarah was caught off guard by the direct question, but she had prepared for this. She straightened her shoulders and met his gaze directly. Because Meridian doesn't just create technology, Mr. Sterling. You solve problems that make people's lives better. Your education software has helped millions of students learn at their own pace. Your medical apps have connected doctors with patients in rural areas who couldn't get care otherwise. I want to be part of a company that makes a real difference, not just profits. She took a breath and continued. I know what it's like to struggle, to have doors closed in your face. If I can help Meridian continue its mission while supporting my daughter and showing her that hard work and persistence pay off, then that's where I want to be. Marcus studied her for a long moment, and Sarah had the feeling he was seeing more than just her words. He was seeing the second-hand suit she had carefully maintained, the shoes she had polished that morning, even though the soles were wearing thin, the quiet dignity she maintained even when being humiliated. Mrs. Harrison, he said, without looking at the HR director. Please set up a proper interview room for Ms. Mitchell, and find something to keep Emma entertained. I believe we have a children's area in the employee family room. Have someone from daycare come up to sit with her. But Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Harrison protested, our policy clearly states. Marcus finally looked at her, and his expression made her stop talking immediately. Our policy states that we value diversity, inclusion, and supporting working parents. Ms. Mitchell has shown remarkable problem-solving skills and determination by being here, despite obstacles. Those are exactly the qualities we look for in employees. He paused, then added, in fact, I'll conduct the interview myself. The lobby had gone completely silent. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The CEO himself was going to interview her. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Emma tugged on her mother's hand. Mommy, is the nice man going to give you a job? The innocent question broke the tension, and Marcus actually chuckled. That depends on how well your mommy does in the interview, Emma, but I have a feeling she's going to do just fine. Within minutes, Emma was happily settled in a bright, cheerful room with toys, books, and a kind elderly woman from the company's daycare center who immediately won her over with a puzzle of ocean animals. Sarah followed Marcus to a conference room that had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He gestured for her to sit and poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher before taking a seat across from her. Now, he said, setting aside all pretense of this being a standard interview, tell me your real story, Sarah. Not the rehearsed interview answers, but who you really are and how you got here. Sarah hesitated, then decided if she had already broken all the rules by bringing Emma, she might as well be completely honest. My husband David died 2 years ago, she began, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly around the water glass. He was a construction worker, and there was an accident at the site. Faulty equipment that the company knew about, but didn't fix to save money. One day I was a wife with a partner, planning our future, thinking about giving Emma a little brother or sister. The next day I was a widow, with a 2-year-old, no life insurance because we couldn't afford it, and bills that didn't stop coming just because my world had ended. She looked up at Marcus, expecting pity, but found only attention and respect. I've worked 3 part-time jobs for the past 2 years. Grocery store cashier during the day, cleaning offices at night, weekend shifts at a call center when I could get my neighbor to watch Emma. I've sent out over 200 job applications for full-time positions with benefits. This is my 43rd interview. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You'd think I'd be better at them by now, but it's hard to explain gaps in employment when the gap is, I was trying to keep my child fed and housed. It's hard to talk about 5-year career plans when you're not sure how you'll pay rent next month. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. And yet you're here, professionally dressed, prepared, with a child who is well-behaved and clearly well-loved. That takes incredible strength. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, but blinked them back. It takes necessity, Mr. Sterling. When you have a child depending on you, you find strength you didn't know existed. You swallow your pride and apply for jobs you're overqualified for. You smile when people judge you for the food stamps in your wallet. You tell your daughter that mac and cheese for dinner again is a fun adventure, not because you can't afford anything else. Marcus stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. My mother raised 3 kids alone after my father left, he said quietly. I was 10. My sisters were 8 and 6. She worked 2 jobs and still somehow made it to every school play, every parent-teacher conference. We didn't have much, but we had her, and that was everything. He turned back to Sarah. She used to tell me that the hardest workers weren't the ones in the boardrooms, but the ones in the break rooms. The ones who came in early and stayed late, not for stock options but for overtime pay to buy school supplies. She said if I ever ran a company, I should remember that. He sat back down and pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. I'm going to make you an offer, Sarah. Not for the administrative coordinator position, but for something else. We're launching a new initiative called the Working Parents Program. It's designed to help employees balance family and career with flexible hours, on-site childcare, and support services. I need someone to help run it, someone who understands the challenges firsthand. Sarah's mouth fell open, but I don't have experience in program management. Marcus held up a hand. You have experience in life management, which is far more valuable. You've juggled multiple jobs, raised a child alone, maintained dignity under pressure, and still showed up here today, ready to fight for an opportunity. Those aren't skills you learn in business school. He named a salary that made Sarah's head spin. It was more than she had made in the last 2 years combined, plus full benefits, including health insurance that covers dependents, education assistance if you want to pursue additional training, and of course, free on-site childcare for Emma. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks now, and she didn't try to stop them. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for someone you just met? Marcus smiled, and for a moment, Sarah saw not the billionaire CEO, but the boy who had watched his mother struggle. Because someone should have done it for my mother. Because companies like ours succeed when we recognize that our employees are whole people with lives and responsibilities outside these walls. And because, frankly, anyone who can handle what you've handled while raising a happy, polite child is exactly the kind of problem solver we need. He stood and extended his hand. So, Sarah Mitchell, will you join Meridian Tech Solutions? Sarah stood on shaking legs and shook his hand, her grip firm despite her tears. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Marcus nodded, then did something unexpected. He pulled out his wallet and handed her a business card, but not his own. This is my personal attorney, the construction company that was responsible for your husband's death, the one with the faulty equipment. We're going to make sure they're held accountable. No family should lose someone because a company cut corners on safety. Sarah stared at the card, then at Marcus, unable to speak. He patted her shoulder gently. Take the rest of the day. Take Emma somewhere fun. Celebrate. You can start Monday. Mrs. Harrison will have all the paperwork ready, and she'll be much more pleasant, I assure you. As he walked to the door, he paused. Oh, and Sarah, that suit you're wearing? It's not designer, but you've maintained it beautifully. That attention to detail, making the most of what you have. That's what's going to make you excellent at this job. After he left, Sarah stood alone in the conference room, looking out at the city skyline through those massive windows. 6 months ago, she had stood on her apartment's fire escape, looking at this same skyline, wondering how she would make it through another month. Now she was standing inside one of those gleaming towers, with a job that would change everything for her. And Emma. She thought about David, how proud he would be, how he would have picked her up and spun her around in celebration. The grief was still there, would always be there, but now it was accompanied by something else, hope. When she collected Emma from the daycare room, her daughter was proudly showing the elderly caretaker a picture she had drawn. "Look, Mommy, I drew our new life." It was a child's drawing, simple and colorful, showing to stick. Figures holding hands in front of a tall building, with a bright yellow sun overhead. "It's beautiful, baby," Sarah said, scooping Emma into her arms. "And you know what? Our new life is going to be beautiful too." As they walked through the lobby, Sarah noticed Mrs. Harrison standing near the reception desk. The HR director's face was carefully neutral, but she gave Sarah a small nod. Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement. Sarah nodded back, choosing grace over grudge. They pushed through those heavy glass doors into the morning sunshine, and Sarah felt lighter than she had in 2 years. Emma was chattering about the toys in the playroom and the nice lady who had taught her a new song. Sarah listened with half an ear, her mind already racing with ideas for the working parents program. She thought about all the other single mothers out there, the ones working multiple jobs, the ones showing up to interviews with hidden desperation, the ones being judged for circumstances beyond their control. That evening, Sarah and Emma had dinner at a real restaurant for the first time in months. Nothing fancy, just a family diner with vinyl booths and cheerful waitresses. But Emma acted like it was a palace. She carefully studied the children's menu, sounding out words she knew, and proudly ordered her own meal. "Mommy," Emma said through a mouthful of pasta, "that man today was nice. Is he going to be your friend?" Sarah thought about Marcus Sterling, about the pain he had glimpsed in his eyes when he talked about his mother, about the way he had crouched down to Emma's level, about how he had seen her not as a charity case but as an asset. "I think he might be, baby. I think he might be a friend to a lot of people who need one." Emma nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to her 4-year-old mind. Good. Everyone needs friends. Even important people in tall buildings. Sarah laughed, really laughed, for the first time in so long. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Everyone needs friends." Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop, researching ideas for the Working Parents program. She thought about emergency childcare for when babysitters called in sick, about support groups for single parents, about flexible schedules that acknowledged that school plays and doctor's appointments were just as important as board meetings. She thought about creating a program that would ensure no other parent would have to choose between a job opportunity and their child, would have to face that humiliation in a marble lobby while their child watched. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. I wanted to make sure you were okay. First days, even when they're good, can be overwhelming." Sarah smiled at the unexpected kindness and typed back, "More than okay. Already working on ideas for the program. Thank you for seeing me, not just my circumstances." The response came quickly. "I didn't give you anything you didn't earn. You showed up. You stood your ground. You didn't let anyone make you small. That's not charity. That's character." Sarah set down her phone and walked to Emma's room, standing in the doorway watching her daughter sleep. Emma's arm was thrown over her favorite stuffed animal, a worn bear named Mr. Buttons that had been a gift from David. In the soft glow of the nightlight, Emma looked so peaceful, so unaware of how close they had come to the edge, how one man's kindness had changed their trajectory. "We're going to be okay, David," Sarah whispered to the darkness. "I'm going to make sure she has everything she needs, everything she deserves, And I'm going to help other families too. I promise. Monday came faster than expected. Sarah dropped Emma off at the company's daycare, marveling at the bright, cheerful space with its reading corners and art stations. Emma immediately made friends with another little girl, and Sarah had to practically drag herself away from watching her daughter bloom in this new environment. Her new office was modest but beautiful, with a window that let in natural light and a desk that didn't wobble when she typed. Mrs. Harrison had indeed been more pleasant, walking her through the paperwork with professional courtesy, and when Sarah passed her in the hall later that week, the older woman actually stopped her. "I owe you an apology," Mrs. Harrison said stiffly, as if the words were difficult to say. "I made assumptions based on appearance rather than capability. That was wrong of me." Sarah could have been cold, could have made the woman squirm, but she thought about the grace Marcus had shown her. "We all have bad days, Mrs. Harrison. What matters is that we learn from them." The HR director's face softened slightly. "Marcus was right about you. You're going to do good things here." As the weeks turned into months, Sarah threw herself into building the Working Parents program. She created emergency childcare services, partnered with local schools for after-school pickup programs, and established a fund for employees facing unexpected family crises. The program was so successful that other companies began reaching out, wanting to create similar initiatives. Emma thrived in the daycare, making friends and learning new things every day. She would come home chattering about the letters she had learned, the songs they had sung, the games they had played, the worried, shy little girl who had hidden behind. Her mother's leg was transforming into a confident, happy child. One evening, 6 months after that fateful interview, Sarah was working late on a presentation for the board about expanding the program. She heard a knock on her office door and looked up to see Marcus standing there with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, setting one on her desk. "Emma's already asleep in the daycare nap room. They said she wore herself out playing astronaut." Sarah smiled, accepting the coffee gratefully. "She's obsessed with space this week." Last week it was dinosaurs. Marcus sat in the chair across from her desk, looking relaxed in a way she rarely saw him during business hours. "You've exceeded every expectation, you know. The board is impressed. More importantly, you've helped 17 families stay with the company who would have otherwise left due to childcare issues." Sarah felt pride warm her chest. It's not just about retention, though that's important. It's about showing people they're valued as whole humans, not just employees. Marcus nodded, studying her with those intelligent brown eyes. "You've changed the culture here, Sarah. People feel seen in a way they didn't before." There was a comfortable silence as they both sipped their coffee. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice quiet. "I wanted to tell you something. After my father left, my mother worked for a company that treated her like she was disposable. They knew she couldn't afford to quit, so they took advantage. Extra hours with no overtime, no flexibility for school events, no understanding when one of us got sick. She died at 58, worn out from decades of being ground down by a system that saw her as replaceable." He looked directly at Sarah. "When I built this company, I promised myself it would be different. But somewhere along the way, in the push for profits and growth, I lost sight of that promise. You reminded me why I started this. You brought humanity back to Meridian." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "You brought humanity to us first. You saw past the desperate single mom with the kid in tow and recognized someone with something to offer." Marcus stood to leave, then paused at the door. "There's something else. The lawsuit against the construction company, the one responsible for David's death. My attorney says they're ready to settle. It won't bring him back, but it will ensure you and Emma are financially secure for life." Sarah stood abruptly, her hand over her heart. "Marcus, I don't know what to say." He smiled softly. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep making this company, this world, better for families like yours. After he left, Sarah sat in her office, overwhelmed by how much had changed. That desperate morning when she had stood outside the glass doors, holding Emma's hand and gathering courage, felt like a lifetime ago. She had walked in seeking a job and found so much more: purpose, community, and a chance to make a difference. She thought about all the single mothers who would come after her, who would walk through those same glass doors without fear of judgment, knowing that this was a company that understood that sometimes life happened, that children got sick, that babysitters canceled, that being a parent didn't make you less professional or less valuable. The Working Parents program had already helped dozens of families, but Sarah knew this was just the beginning. She had proposals for partnership with local colleges for continuing education, plans for a scholarship fund for employees' children, and ideas for expanding the program to other Meridian offices across the country. As she packed up for the night, her phone buzzed with a text from Emma's teacher at the daycare. "Emma drew a picture for you today. She said it's your family. She included Mr. Marcus because she said he's part of your work family. Thought you'd want to know." Sarah smiled, thinking about how perceptive children could be. Emma had sensed something Sarah was only beginning to acknowledge, that Marcus had become more than just her boss. He was a friend, a supporter, someone who understood loss and resilience in ways that created an unspoken bond between them. When she picked up Emma from the nap room, her daughter stirred sleepily and wrapped her arms around Sarah's neck. "Mommy, are you happy?" Emma asked in that drowsy, honest way children do. Sarah held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the solid weight of this little person who had given her the strength to keep going when everything seemed impossible. Yes, baby mommy is very happy, and she was. Not the simple happiness of easy times, but the deep, hard-won happiness of someone who had walked through fire and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. The happiness of someone who had faced judgment and rejection but refused to be diminished. The happiness of someone who had found her purpose, not in spite of her struggles, but because of them. A year later, Sarah stood on a stage in front of 300 people, delivering a keynote speech at a national conference on workplace inclusion. In the front row sat Emma, now 5 years old, wearing a dress she had picked out herself and sitting properly like the big girl she insisted she was. Beside Emma sat Marcus, who had become not just a mentor, but a true friend. Someone who showed up for Emma's kindergarten graduation and knew how she liked her hot chocolate. Sarah spoke about that morning when she had been rejected for bringing her child to an interview, about the HR director who had tried to have her escorted out, about the security guard who had been called. But mostly she spoke about the CEO who had seen past the circumstances to the person, who had recognized that desperation and determination could look very similar, and who had chosen to bet on the latter. Every single parent in this room knows the weight of trying to be everything to everyone, Sarah said, her voice strong and clear. We know what it's like to be judged for putting our children first, to be seen as less committed because we have pickups and drop-offs, doctor's appointments, and school plays. But what if I told you that these experiences don't make us less valuable employees, but more valuable ones? What if I told you that the skills we develop raising children alone, managing households on insufficient resources, making impossible choices daily, are exactly the skills companies need? The audience was silent, absorbed. Sarah continued. That morning, when I stood in that marble lobby being told I didn't belong, I almost believed it. But one person looked past the surface and saw strength where others saw weakness, saw potential where others saw problems. That changed everything, not just for me and my daughter, but for every family that has since benefited from the programs we've created. She found Marcus's eyes in the crowd. Sometimes we get so caught up in policies and procedures, in the way things have always been done, that we forget that behind every resume is a human being with a story. Behind every interview is someone's hope for a better future. And sometimes, Bringing a child to an interview isn't unprofessional. It's the most professional thing a person can do, because it shows they'll show up no matter what, they'll find a way no matter the obstacles. The speech ended to thunderous applause. People stood, many wiping tears from their eyes. Sarah saw other single parents in the crowd, their faces reflecting recognition, validation, hope. After the conference, as Sarah and Emma walked hand in hand through the hotel lobby, Emma looked up at her mother with those wise blue eyes. "Mommy, you made those people happy." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "I hope so, baby. I hope I made them feel seen, like Mr. Marcus made us feel seen," Emma asked with the startling clarity children sometimes possessed. "Exactly like that, sweetheart." That evening, at the conference gala, Sarah stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Marcus joined her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the world sparkle below. "You've come so far from that morning in the lobby," he said quietly. Sarah laughed softly. "We both have. You've implemented the working parents program company-wide. The board that initially resisted is now using it as a recruiting tool. You've proven that supporting employees' whole lives is good business." Marcus turned to face her. "It was never about business, Sarah. It was about doing what's right. You taught me that." Their eyes met and held. Over the past year, their relationship had evolved from employer-employee to colleagues, to friends, to something harder to define. There was respect, certainly, and friendship, but also something else. Something that hummed in the quiet moments like this one. "Marcus," Sarah began, then stopped, unsure how to navigate this new territory. He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "I know, I feel it too, but there's no rush. We have time to figure out what this is, what it could be." Sarah smiled, grateful for his patience, for his understanding that she was still healing, still learning to trust again. "Emma adores you, you know? She asked me the other day if you could come to her school's career day." Marcus's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I would be honored." As they stood there, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. That desperate morning when she had stood outside Meridian Tech Solutions. She could never have imagined this, speaking at conferences, running a program that helped hundreds of families, having financial security for the first time in years, and standing beside a man who saw her not as a charity case or a victim but as an equal, a partner, a force for change. The title of her story. Single mom was rejected for bringing her child to the interview until the Millionaire CEO walked in, had become legend within the company. A reminder that sometimes the most unconventional moments lead to the most transformative outcomes. But Sarah knew the real story was more complex and beautiful than any headline could capture. It was about resilience and recognition. About the power of seeing people for who they truly are, rather than their circumstances. It was about Emma, who had gone from a shy, worried little girl to a confident kindergartner, who believed anything was possible because she had watched her mother make the impossible happen. It was about Marcus, who had carried his own wounds, and had chosen to heal them by helping others heal theirs. 3 years passed. Sarah's Working Parents program had been adopted by dozens of companies nationwide. She had written a book about her experiences, with all proceeds going to a foundation for single parents. Emma was now 8, thriving in school, full of dreams about becoming an astronaut-veterinarian-artist. And Marcus, well, Marcus had become family in every way that mattered. They had taken their time, careful not to rush, making sure Emma was ready, making sure they were building something solid and real. The day Marcus proposed, he didn't just ask Sarah to marry him. He asked Emma if he could officially become her dad. Emma's enthusiastic yes could probably be heard 3 blocks away. The wedding was small, held in the Meridian building's rooftop garden, with employees who had become friends and family gathered to celebrate. Mrs. Harrison, who had become one of Sarah's strongest supporters. even made a toast about the importance of second chances and first impressions being wrong. In her speech, Sarah said, "3 years ago, I walked into this building as a single mom, just trying to survive. I was rejected, judged, and nearly escorted out by security. But one person chose to see differently, to look beyond the surface, and that made all the difference. Marcus didn't just give me a job that day. He gave me the chance to discover who I really was, what I was capable of, and the opportunity to help others do the same." She looked at Emma, who was wearing a flower crown and grinning broadly. "My daughter once drew a picture of our new life before we even knew what it would look like. She drew 2 figures standing in front of a tall building with a bright sun overhead. She didn't know then that she was drawing our future. But children have a way of seeing possibilities that adults have forgotten to look for." Turning to Marcus, Sarah continued, "You saw those possibilities too. You saw that a single mom bringing her child to an interview wasn't a liability, but an asset. You saw that struggle creates strength, that desperation can forge determination, and that sometimes the people who need chances the most are the ones who will do the most with them." The wedding celebration went late into the evening, with Emma dancing with her new dad, her laughter filling the air like music. Sarah watched them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. David would have wanted this for them, she knew. He would have wanted Emma to have a father figure who cherished her, and for Sarah to have a partner who saw her as whole and complete, not broken and needing to be fixed. 5 years after that fateful interview, Sarah stood once again in the Meridian lobby. But this time, she wasn't a desperate applicant. She was the vice president of human resources, having transformed not just the working parents program, but the entire company culture. The marble floors were the same, the abstract art still hung on the walls, but everything else had changed. The lobby now featured a children's play area where parents could safely let their kids wait during short meetings. The reception desk had a sign that read, "Families welcome here," and it meant it. She was waiting for someone special. Through those glass doors walked a young woman, probably 25, holding the hand of a small boy who couldn't have been more than 3. The woman's clothes were clean but worn, her shoes carefully polished to hide their age. The boy clutched a small toy car, looking around with wide eyes at the impressive space. Sarah recognized the look on the woman's face immediately. It was the same mixture of hope and fear, determination and desperation that she had worn 5 years ago. The woman approached the reception desk hesitantly. "I'm Maria Rodriguez. I have an interview for the customer service position. I had to bring my son. The daycare had an emergency closure, and I couldn't." Her voice trailed off, waiting for the judgment, the rejection. But the receptionist, trained under Sarah's new policies, smiled warmly. "That's perfectly fine. Ms. Rodriguez, we have a wonderful children's area right over there where he can play while you interview. We also have staff who can watch him if you'd prefer. We understand that sometimes life happens, and we're prepared for it." Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really? You're not going to cancel my interview?" Sarah stepped forward then, extending her hand. "Absolutely not. I'm Sarah Sterling, VP of Human Resources. We believe that parents who show up despite obstacles are exactly the kind of dedicated employees we want here." Maria shook her hand, tears gathering in her eyes. "I don't understand. Every other place I've interviewed has turned me away when they see him." Sarah smiled, remembering her own tears in this very spot. "Then they've been losing out on excellent employees. Come on, let's get your son settled, and then we'll have that interview. And don't worry, bringing your child here isn't a mark against you. If anything, it shows us you're someone who doesn't give up easily." As Sarah led Maria and her son to the children's area, she caught sight of Marcus coming out of the elevator. He saw them and smiled, that same warm smile that had changed everything 5 years ago. He came over and crouched down to the little boy's level, just as he had with Emma. "What's your name, young man?" Marcus asked gently. Diego, the boy whispered, clutching his toy car tighter. That's a cool car, Diego. You know, I used to have one just like it when I was your age. Do you like to make it go fast? Diego nodded, a small smile appearing on his face. Marcus smiled back, then stood and looked at Maria. Your son is welcome here any time. We believe that supporting parents means supporting their children too. Maria looked between Sarah and Marcus, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Sarah told her. Just show us what you can do. That's all we ask. The interview went well. Maria was smart, capable, and eager to prove herself. She had been managing a household on minimum wage, caring for her son alone after his father left, and still managing to take online courses to improve her skills. She was hired on the spot, with full benefits and access to the company daycare, as Maria left that day. Holding Diego's hand and clutching her new employee packet, she turned back to Sarah. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. Sarah thought about her answer, then said simply, because someone helped me once when I needed it most. And because I believe that when we lift each other up, we all rise. That evening, Sarah sat in her office, now a corner suite, with windows on two sides. Emma was at soccer practice. Marcus was picking her up, and Sarah had a few quiet moments to reflect. On her desk was a framed photo from that first day 5 years ago, a security camera still that Marcus had saved. It showed Sarah standing in the lobby, holding Emma's hand, facing Mrs. Harrison's harsh judgment. Sarah looked at that woman in the photo, so young, so scared, so determined, and felt proud of how far they had come. Her computer pinged with an email. It was from a CEO at another Fortune 500 company, asking if Sarah would consult on implementing a similar parent support program. This was the 15th such request this month. The movement she had started was spreading, changing corporate culture one company at a time. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Dad and I got ice cream after practice, bringing you your favorite. Love you, Mom. Sarah smiled. Emma called. Marcus' dad so naturally now, as if he had always been there, and in all the ways that mattered, he had been. From that moment, he chose to see their potential instead of their circumstances. Another text came through, this one from Maria Rodriguez. Thank you for today. My son asked if we can come back tomorrow. He's never been excited about me going to work before. You've changed our lives. Sarah typed back. You changed your own life by showing up. We just made sure the door was open. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Sarah thought about all the single mothers out there still struggling, still facing closed doors and harsh judgments. The work wasn't done, would never truly be done. But every Maria they helped, every family they supported, was a victory. Marcus and Emma arrived then, bursting into her office with laughter and ice cream. Emma ran to hug her, getting soccer dirt on Sarah's designer suit, which would have horrified her 5 years ago, but now just made her laugh. Marcus kissed her cheek, and they sat together on the office couch, Emma chattering about her day, sharing their ice cream, just a family enjoying a simple moment together. Mom, Emma said suddenly, my teacher asked us to write about our heroes today. Oh yeah, who did you write about? Sarah asked, expecting to hear about some pop star or athlete. You, Emma said simply. I wrote about how you were brave enough to bring me to your interview, even though people were mean, and how you help other mommies and daddies now, so they don't have to be scared like you were. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. Marcus squeezed her hand. Emma continued, and I wrote about Dad too, because he was brave enough to be kind when everyone else was being mean. My teacher said that's what real heroes do. They choose to be kind, even when it's hard. Sarah pulled Emma close, breathing in the scent of grass and sunshine and childhood. You know what, baby? You're my hero too. You were so brave that day, so good, And you've been brave every day since. We're all heroes, Emma declared with 8-year-old certainty. A whole family of heroes. Marcus laughed, ruffling Emma's hair. I think you're right, Princess. A whole family of heroes. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and Marcus stood on their apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights. It wasn't the penthouse Marcus had once lived in alone, but a warm, comfortable home filled with children's artwork, family photos, and the comfortable chaos of a life truly lived. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? Marcus asked quietly. If I hadn't come down to the lobby that day? Sarah leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. Sometimes, but I like to think we would have found our way somehow. Some things are meant to be. You really believe that? Era thought about all the moments that had led them here. David's death that had seemed like the end of everything, but had somehow led to a new beginning. The desperation that had driven her to that interview, despite having no childcare. Mrs. Harrison's cruelty that had brought Marcus to the lobby at just the right moment. Emma's innocent trust that had melted Marcus's guarded heart. Each moment of pain and struggle had been a stepping stone to something beautiful. I believe, Sarah said finally, that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doors to the best ones. We just have to be brave enough to walk through them. Marcus turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You're the bravest person I know, Sarah Sterling. Mitchell Sterling, she corrected with a smile. I kept part of my old name to remember where I came from. That's one of the 1,000 things I love about you, Marcus said, pulling her close. You honor your past while building your future. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Sarah thought about that desperate morning 5 years ago. She had walked into Meridian Tech Solutions as a single mom who was rejected for bringing her child to an interview. But when the Millionaire CEO walked in, everything changed. Not because he was rich or powerful, but because he chose to see her truth, her worth, her potential. Now she stood as Sarah Mitchell Sterling, wife, mother, executive, advocate, and survivor. She had taken the worst experience of her professional life and turned it into a movement that helped thousands of families. She had found love when she thought her heart would never heal. She had given Emma not just stability, but abundance. Not just a father, but a family. Not just hope, but reality. The title of her story had become her testimony. Single mom was rejected for bringing her child to the interview until the Millionaire CEO walked in. But the real story, the deeper truth, was that two broken people had found wholeness in each other. That a little girl's innocent trust had healed hearts that had forgotten how to hope. And that sometimes, just sometimes, kindness could change everything. As Sarah and Marcus went inside, checking on Emma one more time before bed, watching their daughter sleep peacefully with that same worn teddy bear from years ago, Sarah whispered a prayer of gratitude. 4 closed doors that led to open ones. For rejection that led to acceptance. For desperation that led to determination. For a CEO who saw beyond appearances. For a daughter who taught her to be brave. For a love that came when she least expected it. For a life that proved that happy endings weren't just for fairy tales. They were for single moms who refused to give up. They were for broken people, brave enough to try again. They were for anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong but kept showing up anyway. And as Sarah Mitchell Sterling closed her eyes that night, surrounded by love in a home that had once seemed impossible, she knew that her story, their story, was proof that miracles still happened. Sometimes they came in the form of a CEO in a marble lobby, choosing to see potential where others saw problems. Sometimes they came in the form of a little girl's drawing of a future that seemed too good to be true. And sometimes they came in the form of a second chance that changed not just one life, but countless lives, rippling out like waves from a single act of kindness. The single mom who was rejected for bringing her child to the interview had become a voice for thousands of parents. The Millionaire CEO who walked in had become a father, a husband, and a champion for change. And the little girl who had colored butterflies in a marble lobby had become the heart of a family that proved love could grow in the most unexpected places. Their story had begun with rejection, but ended with acceptance. It had begun with judgment, but ended with justice. It had begun with desperation, but ended with purpose. And most importantly, it had begun with a single mom and her daughter facing the world alone, but ended with a family that faced the world together, stronger for their struggles, grateful for their journey, and ready for whatever came next. Because that's what happens when someone chooses to see beyond circumstances to find the human being underneath. That's what happens when kindness meets courage, when power chooses to protect instead of punish, when love finds a way through the impossible. The single mom was rejected for bringing her child to the interview, until the millionaire CEO walked in, and in that moment, in that choice to see differently, everything changed. Not just for Sarah and Emma and Marcus, but for every parent who would walk through those glass doors after them, knowing they would be seen, valued, and welcomed, children and all.